Hello and welcome to Stage to Sofa. Today it is my absolute privilege to be joined by a very special international artist who was named the Young Singer of the Year at the 2018 International Opera Awards. Having only graduated from Juilliard and the Metropolitan Opera Lindemann Young Artist Programme in 2013, this incredible artist has gone from strength to strength and has since debuted at many amazing international opera houses all around the world. And she's not only an incredible superstar artist internationally, she's also a devoted animal rights activist, particularly for the rehabilitation and rehoming of domesticated abandoned rabbits. It is the wonderful and amazing Irish-Canadian mezzo-soprano, Wallis Giunta. Wallis, thank you so much for joining me today.
Hi, I'm here in Leeds, UK, with my current foster bunny. His name is, well, he came with the name YouTube, but I call him Tubi. Maybe if you're lucky, later in the interview, I'll go grab him. He's just on the floor behind me, so.
Oh my gosh, I would absolutely love that. I was actually going to ask you before we start off, how many rabbits do you have and how are they coping?
Right now I just have one, but he's the 21st bunny I've fostered in the last 7 years, I think.
Wow.
So,
How do you cope with that as well as traveling around the world and being a superstar?
well, I'm not really a superstar, so there's that. But the bunnies actually help me a lot more than I help them. What I'm able to do is in certain cities that I'm doing an opera contract, for example, if it's at least a couple of months that I'm there, I get in touch ahead of time with the local animal rescue and I let them know I'm coming and that I'd be happy to foster and offer my time. And usually they're very keen to have help. So they say, yeah, sure, please. And they set up a bunny for me to foster for the time that I'm there. And I've done this now in lots of different countries like Canada, the US, the UK, in Taiwan. I've done it in Germany. I've done some volunteering with rabbit shelters, but yeah, it's something that I love. And I get a lot of stability and grounding in my hectic life from working with animals. Bunnies are my kind of my soul and heart animal, but I also work with a lot of different little creatures, and I just feel like they give me so much more than I give them. So it's a pretty good exchange.
Oh, that's so amazing. Oh, it's so wonderful that you're helping so many across the world. What a fabulous idea. So, in terms of you, Wallis, and your amazing career, how are you finding this huge, almighty transition that you've been faced with?
I'm actually not that bothered by it. Yeah, I've had a pretty busy schedule for about 12 years now, since I was in undergrad. And I really needed the time, I think, more than I knew. Of course, it's shaking me a bit, not knowing what the future holds. But in a way, as singers, we don't really ever know what the future holds. Even before this, there have been times when I was really looking forward to a particular show or contract, and then it got canceled or it got changed to something else. And I've become accustomed to the idea that things in this industry are constantly shifting, where you get offered a role and you're really excited about it. And sometimes before the contract comes, they just say, oh, sorry, we've gone in another direction and it's not there anymore. So I am used to that and I'm not that bothered by it. So for me, this kind of feels just like a bigger version of that. And I can weather that. I can deal with that. And what I'm really trying to focus on is the aspects of it that are good for me. The healing, the space, the time, the rest for my voice, the time with my partner. We live together here in Leeds, and we've never been able to be in one place for this long together in the 3 years that we've been, a couple. So that's amazing. The opportunity to foster a bunny for this long is a first for me. My third month now. Normally it's 2, and yeah, there's some hard things as well. Not seeing anybody else, not seeing my family as much as I would have liked to. Normally I go back home pretty often. So this is tough, but yeah, it's a mix. It's a
Yeah.
mix of pluses and minuses, and I'm focusing on the pluses.
I think that's a really positive thing to do. And I think it's very important in this time when it is very uncertain and there's lots of, circumstances that we don't know when are going to change. I think it's very good to focus on those positives, and amazing that you're getting some time, quality time with your partner and your bunny. Amazing. Now I'd like to take you back, if you don't mind, to 2013 when you just graduated from the Metropolitan Opera Lindemann Young Artist Programme. How did that time look for you? And how did you find that maneuvering from education into the international opera world?
That's a really good question. Yeah, let me see if I can remember that far back. So, uh, I think what helped for me was that I started working professionally quite a few years before that. I was really lucky to have gone to a school in Toronto for my undergrad and master's, where I was able to start working during my education. They encouraged it. They provided time for us to do that. Like we even had 1 week a month, which was called a project week, dedicated to a performance opportunity, either at school or if you got an outside gig, that was your time to take that. And you weren't docked marks in class if you missed it. And sometimes even you were credited for professional outside engagements. So I was able to build my professional network simultaneously while studying. And I graduated from my university education with a real foot in the door. And that continued into I did 2 young artist programs, first at the Canadian Opera Company and then at the Met. And throughout both of those, I continued to get side gigs, I guess you could say. And both of those programs also honored that for me. So in my 2 years at the COC, the Canadian Opera Company in Toronto, I took a certain amount of time each year to work elsewhere, and they released me. And even more so at the Met, I actually went back to Toronto twice during that time to do 2 big role debuts for the COC, and I think another one in Texas and Fort Worth, and something in Paris as well in 2013. And I was able to kind of stagger that entree, because I think a lot of people, either because they don't realize they can, or their program that they're in literally won't let them, they aren't able to make very many professional connections until they finish their training. And that's a daunting place to be, because you just get chucked out and then you're supposed to just start making calls and like what, I don't know. So I consider myself fortunate. I got management in Canada while I was still a student, and that was really helpful. That was crucial. Even though it was a Canadian management firm and they were focused mainly on gigs within Canada where I was living, and that's fine, they were able to help me transition then to New York when I went down there, and they had good connections in the States, and they really did bridge that gap for me. So I'm very grateful for that. And I know a lot of young singers don't necessarily get management while they're still in their training, but even if you don't have it, you can still make professional connections. You at a local level, you can contact choral societies. So I did a ton of that. I even sang in a choir professionally until I was about 23 in Toronto. I was like a paid section lead in a choir in Toronto. And I love choral singing. It's been a huge part of my development, I guess, from age 8 to 23. That was the main focus, right? But yeah, either way, I think it's super important for young singers, as soon as they feel like they have something that they can offer, even if it's just a couple messiahs a year, get out there, put yourself into the professional world while you're still in training in as many ways as you can, so that when you graduate, you can call those people up and say, I have a degree now and I would love to for you, I guess to answer your question, that made it so that it didn't feel like a big transition for me when I finished my final training stage. I had gigs lined up and I was able to pick up on the momentum that I'd already started.
Yeah, that's really, really interesting. And I think there is something to be said for having those connections and making them and feeling like they are not these big people that are scary. It's actually just getting in contact and being a person before an artist.
Yeah.
Thank you for that. So I'm also wondering now, you've sung at so many amazing opera houses over the last few years. What has been your favourite debut and why?
Ooh. Hmm. That will take a moment. Huh. Now I'm torn between telling you what has been my favorite role in production that I've been able to debut, and which one is more about the theater and the city and the environment. Because it's probably not the same answer. Would you like both, perhaps?
Yeah, let's have both. Why not?
Okay. Um, I think the most exciting debut for the city and the theater and the environment would have been Paris at the Théâtre du Châtelet. I just felt like I was living in a fairy princess dream world. Like it was it's the most gorgeous theater. Being in Paris is kind of something that I never really thought I would do, to sing there. Germany felt like a more likely thing, but I never really pictured myself in France, and that debut came out of the blue in a way. Um, the opera itself was great and really cool, but kind of not even an opera. It was a quasi musical theater production by John Adams called "I Was Looking at the Ceiling and Then I Saw the Sky," and my role was more of a jazz singer. So I loved that, and actually that suits me well because I do sing a lot of different styles. So I think that was good casting on their part, an opera singer who can count John Adams rhythms, but also sound like, Dinah Ross if needed, sort of like, that. Um, yeah. And then in terms of like my favorite role that I've debuted and the most exciting production I've been a part of lately, it would have to be Carmen at Opera Leipzig with one of my absolute favorite directors and people, Lindy Hume, and her design partner, Dan Patra. Their Carmen is stunning and legendary, actually, and it's been around about 30 years. And it was the first time it's been done in Germany, also my first time singing that role. And while I may not be the typical Carmen, vocally or physically, I think it's something that I needed to do. And I think I brought something worthy to the table in terms of kind of showing who she is. I felt like I was a lot more true to the actual novel version, the original source material for the story, our production. And that was really exciting, character-wise and whatnot. And, it's not like a Wagner opera. Carmen is an opera comique, and it doesn't need to be a huge thing. I've always personally wanted to see and hear a Carmen where I felt that she was more believably a young woman, like a real kind of lively, almost a teenager even, like a kind of spark, as opposed to a matronly man-eating, kind of, woo.
Yeah, I know exactly what you mean.
Like, I'm not saying it should be played like any other way. I'm saying it's equally valid to
Yeah.
have another take. That's all. No critique to the typical Carmen interpretation. I just feel like it's worthy to explore other angles. That's all.
Yeah, it's interesting, definitely. And I'd just like to ask, when you're stood there and you've done all of the blocking, you've done all of the rehearsals, you're on opening night and you're in the wings and you're about to go on stage, what is that feeling? What does that look like for you?
I'm pretty calm, actually. The only time I'm not is once in a while in the opera world, you do a jump in, or you're a cover and you get asked to go on and you don't feel properly prepared. Then it's just sheer terror, It's writing things on your hand. It's keeping little cue cards in your pocket in case you need to check between scenes, like what comes next? Oh my God. Having the stage director or assistant director on the side with a book, like kind of pointing and shouting while you're in the middle of an aria. So those kinds of things, it's like being on a roller coaster ride and you're just holding on and hoping you get through to the end of it without falling out of the seat. But normally, if you've had a proper rehearsal period, 3, 4, 5, 6 weeks, and you've learned your music, to me, it doesn't shake me. That's what I'm trained for. I'm like a racehorse who's trained to race. And as long as I'm racing the way I was properly trained to, I'm fine.
Yeah, there's something definitely to be said for preparation, completely. Now, I'm also wondering, being an international singer, it comes with a lot of personal sacrifice. And I know from speaking to you in our phone call beforehand, you are so family orientated, which is lovely. How do you cope though with that element of the opera lifestyle?
Again, you get used to it. It helps if you like to travel and you're not afraid of airplanes and you are good with technology and able to make meaningful connections on whatever these digital platforms we have now, Skype, FaceTime, whatever, Zoom now too, as we're doing. If you can find a way to make that meaningful for you, and I mean, like, it takes presence. You have to put things away, dedicate a time, say, okay, for the next 30, 40, 50 minutes, I'm going to be here with my parents and talk to them and not be checking my texts in the same way that you would in real life if you were there, well, maybe in person. Then it actually isn't so bad. So I do that with my partner. I make sure that we check in every day and we are good about giving each other focus when we're on the phone. And then I also, because like I said, you have to be okay with traveling. I do a lot of traveling. It means sometimes that if I'm on a gig in Spain and my partner here in the UK is working and he can't come see me, then if I get a weekend off between rehearsals, whereas I might really like to just put my feet up and relax, I get on a 6 a.m. flight on Saturday. I fly home. I have 36 hours with him, and then I take the last flight out on Sunday night. And it's a lot of schlepping around and cost sometimes, but that day and a half with him is worth that if it meant that I would have otherwise not seen him for 6 weeks. Same with my family.
Completely.
I go back home quite a bit, and I also actively try and cultivate professional opportunities in my hometown or nearby so that I can see them at the same time and make it like a 2-for-1. So I make sure that I'm home at least 3 or 4 times a year. And luckily my parents love to travel, so they often come to me, which is great. So, it's okay. I'm doing all right. I think I'm probably doing better than most, and I'm really grateful. But yeah, I've gotten used to it and it feels normal to me.
That's
So
amazing. That really is amazing. And I'm so glad to hear it. And I think that will inspire a lot of young singers that are hoping to have the career that you've had. So thank you. Now, your classical singing journey started in a choir, but your musical roots lie in rock and country music from your rock star DJ dad, which is amazing. I'm just wondering, what are your earliest memories of music?
yeah, so they're not classical, that's for sure. My dad is a lover of classic rock and a lot of different genres of music, and he worked in radio for most of his career in a classic rock radio station. So while I was growing up, he was in the prime of that phase of his career. I think he had 20 years on this classic rock radio station, and the first concerts that I went to were with him to see big rock bands, for sure. And I think my parents got a kick out of, or maybe more so my dad got a kick out of taking like a little kid along to see like a Def Leppard concert.
I love it so much. It's brilliant.
So I think my first memory of being at a show was 5 years old probably, and he took me to Def Leppard, just me and him. And my dad usually was hosting or, interviewing the band or there representing his radio station, and he'd have to do like some sort of live to air thing at the halftime. And so he was working, but I think he liked having a little sidekick with him. And I was there in my little purple dress, like, what is going on, but I remember like the energy. I remember the crowd. I remember the lasers and the smoke machines and the sheer kind of power of the sound. And I wasn't afraid of it. I think I was a little bit like confused about all the different kinds of people with the hair and the head banging and, but I definitely remember feeling like this exchange of energy between the stage and the crowd is pretty awesome and like overwhelming. And I don't know if that maybe had an impact on my career choice, because opera can do that too in a big way. But we got smoke machines. We sometimes use lasers, and we certainly have.
Sometimes.
There's some hair going on. There's some interesting hair going on.
Oh, dear.
That was my childhood. Lots of different things too. He'd take us to see world music concerts and kids shows. And my parents even took us to the symphony. They had a children's series, like a young people series, where they would play like Peter and the Wolf or things for kids to interact with. And like you'd get to go up on stage and try and squeak something out on the violin. So I think I had a really well-rounded early musical exposure. No opera until I was older. I got into that on my own, but musically, it was just a feast of all kinds of things.
That's so wonderful. And I'm also thinking now, how much did that variation of early music that you experienced inform the artist that you've become today as an opera singer?
Probably a lot, because I certainly am not a typical opera singer. And if I'm left to my own devices, I'm more likely to learn an old Hank Williams song on the guitar than an aria. And maybe that's to my detriment, but that's where we're at.
No, I love that. And that leads me nicely to my next question, which is, you not only use your instrument, your gorgeous instrument, for classical singing, you use it for other genres as well. How difficult have you found exploring those genres in terms of the reaction that it has within the wider classical community?
Not difficult at all. I don't think it's really as much of a thing as people say. The whole, you have to be a pure artist or else you'll be considered to water down your ability. I did get told that as a young singer, you shouldn't be seen to be spreading yourself too thinly and whatnot. But I do think that if you're able to achieve a certain level in one aspect of the musical training, a level where you're taken seriously in the profession and you're consistently working and people are happy with the result, and then you try to kind of expand your musical repertoire with different styles and bring things into your work, like when I do recitals, taking some music from the kind of singer-songwriter canon and musical theater canon, and bringing that in and mixing it in with the art song, the classical art song. I mean, what is the difference between a Joni Mitchell song and a Schubert song? It's just 200 years or whatever, not even 150. So yeah, I do think that it's made possible by the fact that I first established myself as a classical artist and I'm respected in the industry. If I didn't have that, I would have no business pretending to be an opera singer and also wanting to do Broadway. But as long as you maintain the integrity of what you're doing and you're at the level that you need to be at, I can't really see a problem in diversifying.
Completely, 100% agree. And it's very interesting that you put it like that, because I think it's very important for young singers to hear that there shouldn't be an either or, I think, is the main root of that. Now, in terms of social media, you're very present on social media as a young singer. Do you feel that that's very important for the next generation of young artists in building their platform?
I think it's a tool that you can use, but I don't think you need to. There are definitely some really successful singers of all ages right now that just don't do that, and it doesn't seem to have hurt them much. Again, it's the integrity of what you're doing. If you really are singing at the level that people can't help but acknowledge and want to be a part of what you're doing, whether or not you have an Instagram channel is irrelevant, I think. But if you want to use it as a tool to help you connect with audiences and provide more than just live performances, then it can be very useful. That's what I like about it, the opportunity to connect and to be available to people. Like, I get a ton of young singers writing me and saying, "Oh, I saw your thing here, and I had this question, and it was inspiring to me to hear you say this when you went live on Instagram the other day," or whatever. And that means a lot to me, that I can provide a place that people feel comfortable asking me about stuff, or approaching me, even like you approach me through social media, and
I do.
that's great. I'm sure if I hadn't had Instagram, you would have found another way. But you know what I mean? It's an opening. You're opening yourself up. And I don't think it diminishes or enhances what you do on the stage. I think that has to be its own thing, and it has to have its own merit. But if you're the kind of person that feels like connecting and offering more of yourself, um, it's a really great tool. And I enjoy it. I set limits to myself, how many hours in a week I'll let myself on there. And I'm quite organized. I'll say, okay, I've got this concert on Thursday, so I'm going to do a little flurry of activity to prep for it on Tuesday and Wednesday morning. And then I'm going to shut off and focus and just do the show. And then when it's done, I'll put some stuff up. And I'm targeted in my approach so that I'm not just constantly on there. And I've also made the choice to be a creator and not a consumer. So I post and I engage with what people ask me, but I don't just scroll the feed and like sit there and take stuff in. Because for me, that's not where I get my enjoyment out of social media. It's more about the connection with people.
Completely. I think it's very important that we have figures like yourself in this world that have that as their advocacy, because it's so inspiring. And I think, as you said, there's a lot of singers that have got in contact, me included, that feel safe enough to be able to do that, and that is so amazing and inspiring. So very, very much impressed, and thank you for giving us all that, because we really appreciate it. Now, in terms of obstacles that you face throughout your career, when you first went into the international world, and even before that, what has been the biggest obstacle that you have faced during that time?
Do you mean working as a singer, or just in life?
Working as a singer.
I suppose it's probably my own obstacle, but I really like to please people and give them what they want, make them happy with what I'm doing, and just avoid conflict. That's something that I've always, singing or not singing, looked for in life. Maybe it's a Canadian thing, but what I found it did in my training and early career was it inhibited me in a major way. It meant that I wasn't listening to my inner voice, and I wasn't singing from a place of authority. I was trying to give people what they wanted, and too many people at once, and pretty much always people with differing opinions. And as I'm sure you can imagine, that didn't really help, because if you're trying to give the conductor the tempo he wants, while at the same time giving your singing teacher the shape that they want, and at the same time the coach the diction that they want that doesn't work at that tempo, it's just not possible. What comes out is a half-assed version of all of those things, and nothing that's true to you. So I don't know when or how, but at some point, shortly after leaving New York, when I was officially done with training and everything, and I was on my own out in the career, I just let that fall away. I think it coincided with moving to Germany, and it probably wasn't accidental, but when I was in my late 20s, yeah, I guess about 5 years ago, I moved to Germany to do a fest contract in Leipzig. And all of a sudden, people sort of let me do my thing. Like, I really have to give credit to the opera house there for trusting me as an artist. Of course, they would help me prepare the roles. The conductors would give feedback about what they wanted, and it wasn't like they didn't care, but they let me create my own work and just gently guided. And that was the first time I'd felt free to do that regularly. And what it did is it showed me that I actually am best when I lead my own way and ask for help when I need it, and know who to trust and who to go to for diction and who to go to for shaping and phrasing and whatnot. But know that Wally actually has a pretty good idea by now of what she should do, and she should listen to herself. It was a long process, let me say, to kind of go from being the people pleaser to the person who trusts their instinct, but maybe a decade. But now that I've kind of moved on from that, it's just launched me into a whole different level of confidence, of singing better, just really singing better,
Yeah.
because I'm not trying to do things for other people.
Yeah.
So I would everyone to just start that as soon as possible.
I can relate to that. I also have the same traits, so I fully relate to it. And I'm wondering now what piece of advice you would give to the young singers who perhaps are on undergrad programs, postgrad programs, young artist programs. They are in this huge pool of uncertainty right now. What would you say to them at this moment in time as advice for moving forwards in this industry that we are kind of in the unknown about at the moment?
Yeah. Well, one sliver of hope that I've kind of hung on to is that while our industry is at a turning point, perhaps, or very uncertain, almost everything is. So for once, the arts are not alone in that. So I wouldn't say, get out now, become a dentist. If you want to be a dentist, it's a great time to make that shift. But if you still feel like you want to be an artist, I believe that the world will always need artists. And I believe that whenever this is over, whenever we go back to a non-pandemic world, even if it's a different world, there will be a place for us. And the best thing you can do right now is reestablish for yourself why you're doing this. Because I didn't find I had the time at any point in my training. It was just program to lesson to coaching. And I often felt like I was just barely keeping my head above water and never actually taking charge of my own direction. So we all have a chance to do that right now and develop ourselves in a more conscious way, with space and time and lack of vocal fatigue. So yeah, we can't really do the opera part, but you can do the artist part. You can even just think about things, how do you feel about certain aspects of performing? What are your strengths? Learn a new language. Read the source material. Let's say you really want to do a role, but you're not ready to start learning it yet musically. Read the book. Read the Beaumarchais plays of all those Mozart and Rossini operas. Freaking hilarious, and this is a great time. And lastly, I would recommend something that I'm involved with right now, which is mentorship. Reach out to people and ask for help. Most people have lots of time right now, and in this industry, conductors, directors, other singers are uniquely available to you. So I've actually started a mentorship program with some of my colleagues in North America, and we're calling it YAM, Young Artist Mentorship. And we're basically just we're developing it right now, but we're bringing together established professionals with younger singers who are between like master's, postgraduate, and young artist program level, kind of the 2 to 4 years around when you finish your training and just kind of get out into the career. And anyone can sign up. It's open to all people internationally. So if you're interested, there's information on my social media. You can look it up on Facebook. It's the AGMA Soloist Coalition. And just reach out to me as well on Facebook or Instagram if you want more info about it. Like, we haven't got a website yet. We're putting it together, and of course it's difficult to start anything right now because people are everything's just different. But
Everything's
it's
very upside down, isn't it? That's the thing. But I will definitely link to that on my social as well for anyone who's interested. So I'll make sure that's on this video. I suppose my final question now, Wally, is what piece of advice would you give to 18-year-old Wally?
I would tell her to keep doing all the things that she's doing, but take more time to stop and experience life along the way. Just
That is amazing.
stick your head up once in a while out of the weeds and see the sunshine. Yeah.
Amazing. Honestly, Wallis, you have been such an incredible joy to interview. Thank you for your generosity of time and your open spirit as always. And thank you so much for joining me on Stage to Sofa.
Would you like to see the bunny?
I would love to see the bunny. Please, yes, before we end. Oh, he's gorgeous.
He's a gorgeous baby. He's an English spot, and he's got beautiful little markings around his eyes and nose, and he's very sweet. You're sweet? Yeah, you're very sweet.
Oh my goodness, he is absolutely sensational. What's his name?
Well, he came from the shelter with the name YouTube, so
yes, you said.
we're going, but I call him Tubi.
Tubi, that was it. Oh, he's gorgeous. Thank you so much, Wallis. You've been amazing.
Thank you.